we get into today's story, make sure to hit the like button if you enjoy this content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on the story, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a new confession. Let's get started. Emma and Daniel had been married for 12 years, but the beginning of their love story felt as vivid to her as if it had happened only yesterday. She could still remember the exact moment she first saw him in their freshman sociology class. Daniel was the one who'd come in late that day, searching for a seat in a room filled with distracted students. Emma had noticed him immediately, his tousled hair, the quick apologetic smile he flashed as he slipped into an empty seat a few rows over. There was something about him that drew her in, even then, before they'd exchanged a single word. They were strangers at the time, yet his presence seemed to light up her world in a way she hadn't felt before. Over the next few weeks, they kept crossing paths, at the library, at the campus coffee shop, and then at a mutual friend's study session. Finally, one evening after class, Daniel had walked up to her with that same easygoing smile and struck up a conversation. From that moment on, their lives intertwined. He was warm and funny, always quick to make a joke, and she loved the way he could make her laugh even on the most stressful days. Emma was quieter, more reserved, but Daniel always drew her out, made her feel special, seen. They talked for hours, sharing dreams, fears, and ambitions. He joked that he knew from their first meeting that he was in for the long haul. 2 years after graduation, they got married in a small, cozy ceremony with just their closest family and friends. They didn't wait to start a family either, welcoming their son, Alex, just a year into their marriage, followed by their daughter, Sophie, 3 years later. Their little family grew into a tight-knit unit, filled with love and the quiet joys of everyday life. They built their world together, layer by layer. Every decision, where to live, which schools to choose for the kids, their approach to finances, even their weekly routines, became part of the strong foundation they worked to create. But as the years passed, the once vibrant fire of their romance began to dim. Their relationship was stable, dependable, but it lacked the passion and intimacy they'd shared in the beginning. The excitement had faded, replaced by the rhythms of daily life, juggling jobs, the children's activities, bills, and housework. Emma, who once felt cherished and truly seen by Daniel, now often felt invisible in their shared life. Her days were packed with work and family, leaving little time for anything else. By the time she finished grading papers and managing the household, she was exhausted, and Daniel was usually already half asleep in front of the TV. Emma didn't know when it happened exactly. The change was subtle, creeping in like a shadow that stretched longer as each day passed. Nights that had once ended in whispered conversations now ended with her working on lesson plans or Daniel's head laying back on the couch, asleep before he even made it to bed. The deepest loss, though, lingered in their bedroom. The intimacy they once shared had faded into absence, as if it had been gently packed away and forgotten, left behind in the chaos of daily life. They had always been close in that way, finding comfort and closeness in each other's arms, but now it seemed that two had slipped from their grasp. There was always a reason: exhaustion from work, late nights with the kids, or just the endless weight of responsibilities. Yet of all the things she missed, Emma missed this closeness the most: the warmth, the reassurance, the quiet promise of connection between them. She missed the way they once fit together, without words, without hesitation. She knew he probably felt the same distance she did, though neither of them had ever spoken about it. Maybe they were both afraid of what they might find if they looked too closely, too honestly, at what had come between them. One afternoon, Emma was scrolling through her emails during a rare break between classes when she saw a message that caught her eye. It was an invitation to her high school reunion. She hadn't been back to her hometown in years and had lost touch with most of her old friends after moving to the city and building a life with Daniel. Yet for some reason, the idea of revisiting that part of her past stirred something inside her. She felt a wave of nostalgia for the carefree girl she'd once been, for the life she'd left behind. Emma wondered what her old classmates were doing, how their lives had turned out, who they'd become. The thought lingered with her all day, and when she came home that evening, she brought it up with Daniel. "Would you want to go with me?" she asked him tentatively, her voice hopeful. She thought it might be a great chance for them to reconnect, to share a night of fun and laughter, and perhaps rediscover the closeness they'd once felt, the thing that she missed the most. He looked at her, his brow creasing with regret. "I'd love to, Em, but I've got that new project at work. It's going to mean long hours for the next few weeks. I really don't think I can take the time off." Emma tried to mask her disappointment. She wanted to share this experience with him, to have him there bridging the gap between her past and present. "I understand," she said, forcing a smile. "It's just a weekend anyway. I'll go on my own." So she made the arrangements. When the day arrived, she packed her bags, gave her kids a goodbye kiss, and set off for her hometown, her heart a curious mix of anticipation and nerves. As she drove, memories surfaced, filling her with a nostalgia she hadn't expected to feel so strongly. She wondered what her old friends were like now, how their lives had unfolded, and if she'd even recognize herself in the reflection of their memories. The reunion was held at a charming upscale bar on Main Street, one of those places with dim lighting, polished wood, and soft jazz playing in the background. She felt a rush of memories as she entered, the scent of familiar perfumes, the sound of laughter, the sight of faces that once populated her daily life. People were grouped around tables, laughing, catching up on lost years, trading life stories with the ease that only old friends could. Emma slipped into the crowd, sharing hugs and laughter, letting herself drift on the waves of nostalgia. It was then, in the middle of all the chatter and music, that she saw him. Luke. Luke had been her high school boyfriend, the one who knew her best during those formative years. He was her first love, the boy she'd shared her big dreams and deepest fears with. They'd been inseparable back then, both convinced they'd go to college together, maybe even marry someday. But life had taken them on different paths. They'd lost touch after high school, both of them swept up by the currents of adulthood. Seeing him again brought a rush of old feelings she hadn't anticipated. Luke noticed her too. His face broke into a smile, and he made his way over. "Emma," he said warmly, pulling her into a hug, "it's been so long." They began talking and catching up on their lives. Luke was now a writer, recently divorced and living only a few hours away. As they reminisced about high school, the conversation took on a familiar rhythm, an effortless flow that felt as though no time had passed at all. Emma found herself laughing more than she had in months, remembering the quirks of their old classmates, the silly things they'd done together, the moments they'd shared that no one else would understand. It was comfortable and exciting, like slipping on an old, well-loved sweater. At one point in the evening, Luke turned to her, his expression suddenly serious. "Want to get out of here?" he asked, his voice soft. "Maybe go somewhere quieter to talk?" Emma felt a flutter in her chest, a mix of excitement and apprehension. She knew this was dangerous territory, but there was a part of her, a lonely, aching part, that wanted to say yes. She wanted to feel alive again, to experience a connection that went beyond the routines and responsibilities of her everyday life. She found herself nodding, and together they left the bar, stepping into the quiet night. They wandered to a small, familiar park just down the road, one they had often gone to in high school. They found a bench under a canopy of trees, the moon casting a soft glow on the ground. As they sat, a comfortable silence settled over them. Emma looked around, taking in the familiar surroundings, the memories flooding her with a bittersweet longing for a simpler time. "It's strange, isn't it?" Luke murmured, glancing at her. "Being back here with you. It's like we're teenagers again." Emma nodded. "It feels good." "It's been a long time since I felt like this," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Luke turned to her, his eyes full of understanding. "I get it. Life doesn't always turn out the way we thought it would, does it?" Emma felt a lump in her throat as she thought about her life with Daniel. She loved him deeply, loved their children, loved the life they'd built, but she couldn't deny that something was missing. She felt an emptiness, a yearning for connection, for intimacy. She'd tried to ignore it, to push it down, but now, with Luke beside her, those feelings rose to the surface. "I feel like I'm disappearing," she said softly, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "Like I'm just going through the motions." Luke reached over, taking her hand in his. "You don't have to explain," he said gently. "I understand more than you know." They sat in silence, her hand in his, the weight of their unspoken words hanging between them. Emma looked at him, her heart pounding, feeling the pull of something she'd tried so hard to bury. She knew it was wrong, knew she should walk away, but at that moment all she could feel was the aching desire to be seen, to be known, to be held. She leaned in, and their lips met in a soft, lingering kiss. The kiss deepened, years of unspoken feelings flooding over them, washing away the boundaries of time and circumstance. She felt a thrill, a spark, a piece of herself that she thought had been lost forever. They found themselves back at Luke's hotel room, and in the quiet of the early morning hours, they shared something she hadn't felt in years, a connection, a spark, an intimacy that reached deep into her soul. When she awoke, guilt settled heavily over her. Luke was asleep beside her, and for a moment she simply watched him, feeling both warmth and shame. She knew she'd crossed a line she could never uncross. Quietly, she slipped out, dressed, and left the room without a word, her heart pounding as she walked down the empty hallway, the weight of her actions pressing down on her. The drive home was a blur of emotions. She couldn't believe what she'd done. She knew it was a mistake, but part of her also knew that it had awakened something within her, something she'd been missing for a long time. When she arrived home, she saw Daniel in the backyard with Alex and Sophie, laughter filling the air. It was a beautiful sight, yet she felt a deep ache in her chest as she looked at her family, at the life she had risked. In the days that followed, Emma threw herself into her marriage. She cut ties with Luke, ignoring his calls and messages, focusing instead on reconnecting with Daniel. She planned small surprises for him, initiated conversations, and made an effort to be present, truly present, in their shared moments. Daniel noticed the change, responding with a warmth and tenderness she hadn't seen in a long time. They laughed together more, shared more, and slowly the intimacy that had been missing began to return. Months passed, and though the connection with Daniel grew stronger, Emma still carried the weight of her choice. She knew she had made a mistake, and the guilt lingered like a shadow, a reminder of what she'd almost lost. But she also knew she'd chosen her family, chosen to stay, to rebuild, and to cherish the life she'd built. In quiet moments, she sometimes thought of Luke, of the girl she'd once been, and of the risks that desire could bring. But ultimately, she found solace in knowing that she had chosen to honor the love she had, the life she'd built, and the family she cherished. And though the memory of that night would stay with her, she had found a way to forgive herself and move forward, choosing to build something real, something lasting, with the man she loved. Thank you for watching.